Hey everyone, I've got a story for you that's part travel nightmare, part corporate horror show, and 100% satisfying revenge. If you've ever had to deal with an HR department that treats you like garbage, you're gonna love this one, trust me. So picture this, it's March 2020 and I'm 28 years old working as a senior consultant at this mid-sized firm in Manhattan. I'd been there for 3 years, climbing the ladder, doing everything right. You know how it is putting in those 60-hour weeks, kissing ass when necessary, building relationships with clients. I was good at my job, really good, and everyone knew it. Now I should probably mention that I'm half Serbian on my mom's side. My grandmother, my baba, she's this incredible woman who survived World War II, raised 5 kids on her own, and basically held our entire family together through sheer force of will. She's in her 80s now, living in Belgrade, and she'd been asking me to visit for years. Years, you guys. And I kept putting it off because, well, work always came first, right? Finally, in March, I decided to take some vacation time. 2 weeks, nothing crazy. I booked my flight, told my boss I'd be unreachable for a bit, and hopped on a plane to Serbia. I was so excited to see my baba, to explore Belgrade, maybe travel around the Balkans a little. It was supposed to be this amazing, long overdue trip. And then the world ended. Well, not literally, but you know what I mean. I'd been in Belgrade for exactly 6 days when everything started shutting down. First, it was just rumors, oh, there's this virus thing happening, but it's probably nothing. Then it was maybe we should avoid crowded places. Then it was full-on panic mode, borders closing, flights getting canceled left and right, and suddenly I'm stuck in a foreign country with no idea when I'm getting home. I remember the exact moment it hit me. I was sitting in this little in Grad, that's the old town, drinking coffee with my baba, and she's telling me stories about the neighborhood when my phone starts blowing up, text after text from friends back home. Are you seeing the news? When are you coming back? Dude, everything's shutting down. I pulled up the news and just, wow, travel ban, no flights from Europe to the US, duration unknown. I just sat there staring at my phone like, really? Did this just happen to me? My baba, she took one look at my face and said, "That's what she calls me, whatever it is, we'll figure it out, you're home now." And honestly, in that moment, I almost cried. Because I realized I might be stuck there for weeks, maybe months, and I had no idea what that meant for my job, my life, anything. So the next morning, I called my boss, Michael. Good guy, actually, we'd always had a solid working relationship. I explained the situation, told him I was stuck, but that I had my laptop and could work remotely until things settled down. I mean, this was 2020, right? Remote work was becoming a thing anyway. Half our competitors were already doing it. Michael was totally cool about it. He's like, don't worry about it, we'll make it work. Just focus on staying safe and keeping in touch with your clients. Relief, right? I thought I'd dodged a bullet. But then I had to deal with HR, and that's where our story really begins. Sharon, if you've ever worked in corporate America, you know exactly the type of person I'm talking about. Mid-50s, been in HR for like 20 years, treats company policy like it's the 10 Commandments carved in stone. She's one of those people who says things like, that's not how we do things here, and you need to think about what's best for the team. I called Sharon the same day I talked to Michael, just to make sure everything was officially squared away. You know, cross the T's, dot the I's, all that corporate bullshit. Hi Sharon, I wanted to touch base about my situation in Serbia. Michael and I discussed it this morning and she cut me off, just straight up interrupted me. I'm going to stop you right there. I don't know what arrangement you think you've made with Michael, but company policy is very clear. Employees are required to work from our designated office locations. Remote work requires pre-approval through proper channels, and exceptions are only made under extraordinary circumstances. I'm like, Sharon, I think a global pandemic and closed borders qualify as extraordinary circumstances, don't you? That sounds like a personal problem, she said, and I'm not exaggerating, those were her exact words. Maybe you should have thought about the risks before deciding to travel during uncertain times. Uncertain times, like I had a crystal ball and could predict a worldwide pandemic. But here's the thing, I kept my cool. I explained that the borders were closed, that there literally were no flights, that I was physically unable to return even if I wanted to. Well, that's unfortunate, she said, but it doesn't change our policies. You have 2 weeks to resolve your situation and return to the office, or we'll need to discuss your employment status. 2 weeks to solve a global pandemic, right? I hung up the phone and just stood there in my grandmother's tiny kitchen, staring out the window at the empty Belgrade streets, thinking, what the hell just happened? Did this woman seriously just threaten to fire me for being stuck in a pandemic? But you know what? I'm not a quitter. I figured if I could just prove that I could work effectively from Serbia, show them that remote work actually made sense, they'd come around. So I threw myself into the job like never before. I'm talking 12, 13-hour days. I'd wake up at 6 a.m. Belgrade time to catch clients on the East Coast, work through the afternoon with European prospects, then stay up until midnight for West Coast calls. My poor Baba kept bringing me coffee and little sandwiches, worried I was going to work myself to death in her living room. And you know what? My performance was incredible. I was actually doing better work than I'd ever done in the Manhattan office. No commute, no office politics, no interruptions from colleagues wanting to chat by the water cooler, just pure, focused productivity. I closed 2 deals in my first month in Belgrade, 2 deals that had been stuck in the pipeline for months back in New York. My client satisfaction scores went up, my response times improved, everything was better. But Sharon didn't give a shit about results. Every week, like clockwork, she'd call me. Have you made progress on your travel arrangements? When are you planning to return to fulfill your obligations? I need to remind you that your current situation is temporary and not sustainable. And every week, I'd explain that the borders were still closed, that there were still no flights, that I was literally doing everything I could. I even started sending her screenshots of canceled flights, news articles about travel restrictions, anything I could find to prove that I wasn't just screwing around in Europe. Nothing worked. To Sharon, I was just being difficult. Then came May, and that's when things got really ugly. I was expecting my Q1 bonus, $8,000 that I had earned fair and square. I'd hit all my targets, brought in new business, exceeded expectations. It should have been automatic. Instead, I got an email from Sharon. Due to your irregular employment status and failure to maintain required office presence, your quarterly bonus is being pending resolution of your work arrangement. I must have read that email 10 times. Irregular employment status, I was working my ass off, I was bringing in more revenue than half the people sitting in the Manhattan office. I called her immediately. Sharon, what is this about? I earned that bonus, I hit every single target. She said, in that condescending tone she always used, bonuses are contingent on employees meeting all terms of their employment. Right now, you're not in compliance with our workplace requirements. But I'm working, I'm doing my job, I'm doing it better than I've ever done it. From an unauthorized location, using company resources inappropriately, we can't set a precedent that employees can just decide to work from wherever they want. I wanted to scream, I wanted to reach through the phone and shake her, but I kept it professional. Sharon, I'm not on vacation, I'm stuck here because of a global pandemic. This isn't a choice. The circumstances that led to your situation don't change our policies, she said. I'm sorry, but that's just how it is. $8,000 gone because I had the audacity to get trapped in a pandemic. But wait, it gets worse. June rolled around and my paycheck was short. Like significantly short, I'm talking 20% less than usual. I logged into the payroll system, thinking maybe there was some kind of mistake, and there it was, a deduction labeled remote work noncompliance penalty. I called Sharon immediately. What the hell is this penalty on my paycheck? As I've explained repeatedly, you're not in compliance with company workplace policies. Employees who fail to maintain required office presence are subject to salary adjustments. Salary adjustments, you're docking my pay for working from home during a pandemic. I prefer to think of it as an incentive to resolve your situation quickly, she said, and I could practically hear her smirking through the phone. 20% of my salary, every month, for doing my job better than I'd ever done it before. But the final insult, the thing that really made me see red, came in July. I'd been struggling with the internet connection in my grandmother's apartment. It was decent enough for email and basic video calls, but for the kind of high-level client presentations I was doing, I needed something more reliable. So I paid out of my own pocket to upgrade to a premium business connection. Cost me about $200, but it was worth it for the improved performance. I submitted the expense report like I always did for business-related costs. Internet upgrade necessary for client work, $200. Sharon rejected it. Her note said, remote work expenses are not covered under company policy. Employees are responsible for maintaining appropriate work environments at their own cost. I stared at that rejection notice for a solid 5 minutes. They were docking my pay for working from home, withholding my bonuses for not being in the office, and now refusing to reimburse me for the expenses I needed to actually do my job effectively. I was paying them for the privilege of working my ass off. That's when something clicked in my head. I realized that Sharon wasn't just following company policy, she was actively trying to make my life miserable. She wanted me to quit. She wanted me to throw up my hands and walk away so she could say, see, remote work doesn't work. People can't be trusted to do their jobs from home. Well, fuck that. If she wanted a war, I'd give her a war. It was around this time that I got connected with Marco through a mutual contact. Marco was the operations director at that's Croatia's second largest bank, and they were looking for a consulting firm to help with a major digital transformation project. The introduction came through my old college roommate, actually. Sarah was working for a tech company that had done some smaller projects in the region, and when Marco mentioned he was looking for consultants with experience in financial services, she thought of me. Stuck in the Balkans right now anyway, she told him. She speaks the language, understands the culture, and she's brilliant at this stuff. So Marco reached out and we set up a call. What was supposed to be a quick 30-minute introduction turned into a 3-hour deep dive into their challenges, their goals, and their frustrations with American consulting firms that didn't understand the European market. You know what our biggest problem is? Marco said, switching between English and Serbian like we'd been friends for years. These big firms, they send us consultants who fly in for 2 days, present some cookie-cutter solution they've used in Chicago or Dallas, then disappear. They don't understand our regulations, our culture, our customers. We need someone who gets it. And I did get it. Growing up hearing stories from my grandmother, visiting the region as a kid, speaking the language, I understood the nuances that most American consultants missed. The way business relationships work in the Balkans, the importance of personal trust, the regulatory environment, the cultural factors that impact customer behavior. Over the next few weeks, Marco and I had a series of conversations about what they needed. It was big, a complete overhaul of their retail banking operations, new customer onboarding systems, mobile banking platform, data analytics capabilities, the kind of project that could transform their entire business. We want to work with your firm, Marco told me after our fourth call, but we want to work with you specifically. You understand our market in a way that your colleagues in New York never could. This has to be a partnership, not just a vendor relationship. I was excited, obviously. This was exactly the kind of high-impact project I'd been hoping to lead, but I also knew that closing a deal this size would require navigating a lot of internal politics at my firm. The project was worth $11 million over 3 years, the biggest single contract we'd landed in the past 5 years. I started working on the proposal immediately, and I mean working. 18-hour days, diving deep into Croatian banking regulations, analyzing their competitive landscape, understanding their customer demographics. I talked to local fintech companies, studied similar transformations in other European banks, even reached out to contacts at the Croatian National Bank to understand the regulatory roadmap. The proposal I put together wasn't just a service offering, it was a comprehensive strategy for how they could leapfrog their competition and become the most innovative bank in Southeast Europe. But here's the brilliant part, and this is where my location in Belgrade became a massive advantage rather than a liability. Croatian banks operate on Central European time, which meant I could have real-time conversations with Marco and his team during their business hours. Meanwhile, most of my American colleagues were asleep or just waking up. I could respond to questions immediately, jump on calls at a moment's notice, and be available for the kind of ongoing collaboration that really builds trust in a client relationship. If they needed something at 9 a.m. Zagreb time, I was there. If an issue came up at 6 p.m. their time, I was still available. Try doing that from New York, where their 9 a.m. is your 3 a.m. The advantage was huge, but it was more than that. I was essentially functioning as their local consultant while representing a major American firm. I had the credibility and resources of our New York office, but the cultural fluency and availability of someone who actually understood their market. As we got deeper into the proposal process, Marco started making it clear that my involvement wasn't just preferred, it was required. I need to be honest with you, he said during one of our calls. We've talked to 3 other firms about this project, and one of the big American banks. They all sent us beautiful PowerPoint presentations with impressive credentials and case studies from projects in Dallas and Miami, but none of them understand what we're actually trying to accomplish here. What do you mean? I asked. They're trying to solve American problems with American solutions. They want to implement systems that work great in Phoenix but make no sense in Zagreb. You're the only consultant who's asked about our specific regulatory requirements, our customer expectations, our competitive landscape. You get it in a way that they don't. That's when I knew I had them. This wasn't just going to be a successful proposal, this was going to be a complete slam dunk, the kind of win that changes your career trajectory. But I also knew that Sharon was going to try to sabotage it. Sure enough, as we got closer to the final presentation, Sharon started ramping up the pressure. The calls became more frequent, the threats more explicit. I've been very patient with your situation, but my patience is wearing thin, she said during one particularly memorable conversation. You've been out of the office for 4 months now, that's simply not acceptable. Sharon, I'm about to close the biggest deal this company has seen in years. From Belgrade, maybe we should be talking about how to replicate this success rather than punishing me for it. One project doesn't change our fundamental policies, she said, And frankly, I have concerns about your ability to properly manage a client relationship from such a distance. How can you build trust and rapport when you're not meeting with clients face to face? I almost laughed. Sharon, I've had more meaningful conversations with this client in the past 2 months than I've had with some of our New York clients in 2 years. Physical presence doesn't automatically equal better relationships. That's your opinion, she said. But the company's position is clear. We need you back in the office and we need you back soon. I'm prepared to offer you a voluntary resignation package if you can't resolve your situation by the end of the month. End of the month, which was exactly 1 week before our final presentation, too. The timing wasn't coincidental. Sharon knew about the deal she had to know because it was big enough that it would have been discussed in leadership meetings. She was trying to force me out right before I could close the biggest contract of my career. That's when I realized that this wasn't just about company policy or remote work flexibility. This was personal. Sharon had decided that I was a problem that needed to be eliminated, and she was willing to cost the company $11 million to prove her point. Well, two could play that game. Tell you what, Sharon, I said, and I could feel my grandmother's fighting spirit flowing through me. Let me make you a proposal. I'll present to the client next week. If I don't close the deal, I'll resign voluntarily and you can go back to your policies and procedures. But if I do close it, if I bring in $11 million in new business from my grandmother's living room in Belgrade, then we sit down and work out a permanent remote work arrangement. Deal. There was a long pause. I could practically hear the wheels turning in her head. On one hand, she was convinced that remote work couldn't possibly be effective, that I was bound to fail without the proper office environment. On the other hand, if by some miracle I did succeed, she'd have to admit that her entire worldview was wrong. Fine, she said finally. But when this doesn't work out, I don't want to hear any more excuses about why you can't return to the office. Fair enough, I said. See you next week, Sharon. The final presentation was scheduled for 2 p.m. Zagreb time on a Thursday, which meant 8 a.m. in New York. Perfect timing for Sharon and the other executives to watch me either succeed spectacularly or fail miserably. I spent the entire week before the presentation obsessing over every detail. I rehearsed my pitch dozens of times, anticipating every possible question, preparing for every conceivable objection. I knew that if I screwed this up, I wouldn't just lose the deal, I'd lose my job, my career, and my professional reputation. The night before the presentation, I couldn't sleep. I kept running through the slides in my head, second-guessing every word choice, every data point, every recommendation. My grandmother brought me tea at 2 a.m. and found me packing around the living room, muttering to myself in English. She said, settling into her favorite chair, "Come sit with me." I sat down next to her, and she took my hands in hers. These hands that had survived wars and famines and decades of hardship, now holding mine. Your grandfather, he used to say that the biggest battles aren't won with strength, they're won with preparation and patience. You've done the work, you know these people, you understand what they need. Tomorrow you just need to show them what you've already proven to yourself. She was right, I had done the work. I knew this client better than anyone else at my firm possibly could. I understood their challenges, their goals, their market. All I had to do was communicate that understanding effectively. The next morning, I woke up at 6 a.m. and got dressed like I was going to the most important business meeting of my life, which I guess I was. I put on my best blazer, did my hair and makeup perfectly, and set up my laptop in the corner of the living room with the best lighting. At exactly 2 p.m. Belgrade time, I joined the video call. Marco was there with his entire leadership team, 5 people who would be making the final decision. From my company's side, it was Michael, Sharon, and 2 other senior partners who rarely got involved in individual deals but wanted to see what all the fuss was about. Good morning, everyone, I said, looking directly at the camera. Thank you for taking the time to hear our proposal today. I'm excited to share how we can help become the most innovative financial institution in Southeast Europe. For the next 90 minutes, I walked them through everything. The market analysis, the competitive landscape, the regulatory environment, the technical requirements, the implementation timeline, the expected ROI. But more than that, I told them a story about their future, what their bank could become, how their customers would benefit, why this transformation would position them for long-term success. I spoke in both English and Croatian, switching languages naturally to make sure everyone understood the nuances of what I was proposing. I referenced specific Croatian regulations, mentioned local competitors by name, and demonstrated a level of market knowledge that no outsider consultant could have possibly acquired. Halfway through the presentation, I could see Marco nodding along, occasionally making notes, sometimes smiling at points that particularly resonated with him. His team was engaged, asking thoughtful questions, clearly seeing the value in what I was proposing. On the other side of the screen, I could see Sharon's face getting more and more tense as the presentation progressed. Michael looked impressed, The other partners were taking notes. When I finished the formal presentation, Marco asked if his team could have a few minutes to discuss privately. Standard procedure for deals this size. Of course, I said, we'll wait for your call. The screen went black, and suddenly it was just me and the American team. Said one of the partners, that was an exceptional presentation, really comprehensive work. Michael nodded. I've never seen a proposal that demonstrated this level of local market knowledge. You clearly understand their business in a way that would be impossible from New York. Sharon didn't say anything. 20 minutes later, Marco called back. His entire team was on the screen and he was smiling. We've made our decision. We'd like to move forward with your firm with one condition: you remain the lead consultant on this project. The success of this partnership depends on having someone who understands our market and can be available during our business hours. We need you to be our dedicated account manager for the duration of the contract. I felt like I might faint. Marco, that's wonderful. I'm honored that you have that level of confidence in me, and I absolutely accept that condition. Excellent. We'll have our legal team start working on the contract details immediately. This is the beginning of a very important relationship for our bank. After the client call ended, it was just me and the American team again. Michael was grinning, the partners were congratulating me, and Sharon looked like she'd just swallowed a very large, very bitter pill. Well, said Michael, I think we need to have a conversation about work arrangement, don't we? Within a week, I had a new employment contract. Full remote work authorization, not just for the duration of the pandemic, but permanently. A 35% salary increase to reflect my new role as lead consultant on our biggest account. Full reimbursement of all the expenses Sharon had rejected, plus back payment of the bonuses and salary sheet. Oh, and they upgraded my internet connection at company expense, naturally. But the best part wasn't the money or the official recognition. The best part was the email I got from Sharon 2 days after the contract was signed. I want to congratulate you on your success with the account. I'm sure you'll do excellent work as their dedicated account manager. I also want to let you know that I'll be transitioning to a new role within the company and won't be directly involved in HR policy going forward. Translation: she'd been reassigned to some meaningless position where she couldn't make other people's lives miserable. The success with open doors I never could have imagined. Within 6 months, Marco had referred us to 2 other major Croatian companies and a Serbian bank. All of them specifically requested me as the lead consultant, citing my unique understanding of the regional market. That's another $8 million in revenue, all because I was stuck in the Balkans during a pandemic. But here's the thing that really validated everything. The work I was doing wasn't just successful, it was better than anything I could have done from New York. The alignment, the cultural knowledge, the language skills, the personal relationships, all of it combined to create value that simply wouldn't have been possible if I'd been sitting in a Manhattan office. I wasn't just working remotely, I was working strategically. A year later, I was having coffee with Marco in Zagreb. By then, travel restrictions had eased and I could move around freely. We were discussing the next phase of their digital transformation, and he said something that really stuck with me. You know why our partnership has been so successful? It's not just because you're good at consulting, though you are. It's because you never treated us like a foreign client that needed to be managed from a distance. You treated us like partners who deserved your full attention and understanding. That's when I realized that what had happened with Sharon and the remote work battle wasn't really about work policies or corporate culture. It was about trust, respect, and the willingness to adapt to new realities. Sharon saw remote work as a threat to control, a deviation from established norms that needed to be corrected. I saw it as an opportunity to serve clients better, to work more efficiently, and to create value in ways that traditional office-based consulting couldn't match. Guess who was right? Last month, I officially launched my own consulting firm, Balkan Business Solutions. I know a little on the nose, but it works. Marco's bank was my first client, obviously, and they've already referred 3 other companies. I've got a team of 5 consultants now, all working remotely from different locations across Europe and North America. And guess what? 2 people from my old firm have already reached out about job opportunities. One of them was actually Sharon's replacement, who admitted that the company's remote work policies had been in light of my success. As for Sharon herself, I heard through the corporate grapevine that she was restructured out of her position about 6 months after my triumph with. Apparently, driving away your top performers during a global pandemic isn't great for career longevity. Who could have seen that coming? The whole experience taught me something important about fighting for what you believe in. Sometimes the system is stacked against you, and sometimes people in power will try to punish you for challenging their assumptions. But if you're prepared, and if you're willing to prove your point through excellence rather than just arguments, you can change the game entirely. I'm back in the US now, but I spend about half my time traveling between Belgrade, Zagreb, and other European cities where my clients are based. My grandmother loves having me visit regularly, and I've built a business that's more successful and fulfilling than anything I could have imagined while sitting in that Manhattan office. The pandemic forced me into a situation I never would have chosen, but it ended up being the best thing that ever happened to my career. Sometimes you have to get pushed out of your comfort zone to realize what you're actually capable of. And sometimes the best revenge is just being absolutely amazing at your job. That's my story. Thanks for listening, and remember, when someone tells you that you can't do something, sometimes the best response is to prove them spectacularly wrong.